About a year ago, I went on a trip to Alberta, and it was quite epic. Very nice place, and I definitely recommend it. It was a really fun trip, so this year we decided to point our compass east and drive to the island of Newfoundland. And of course we still drove, because flying is for efficient people. And after having the whole family vaccinated, we were actually able to go there without having to quarantine for 2 weeks. So we packed up the camper, slapped on the shameless self-promotion sign, and set off. After driving for a while, we eventually ended up in the province of Quebec. In Montreal, we drove to the top of Mount Royal, where we got a view of the entire city. The city itself was also the ultimate driving test. Small, awkward lanes and construction, lots of traffic, and they had different laws too. For example, turning right on a red light? Nope, can't do that one. That's illegal. But aside from that, the city was really beautiful, and it felt a lot like being in Europe somewhere. Leaving the city was nice too, but the roads were either really good or really bad. By the end of the day, we got to Quebec City and looked around at the older buildings and a big fortress on a cliff. While we were up there, my brother said he lost his hat, so we searched everywhere to find it. Then we looked at the pictures we had taken earlier that day, only to realize that he had never brought his hat in the first place. The next morning, we drove through the rest of Quebec and entered New Brunswick. When we got into New Brunswick, I was actually really surprised how there was so much nothing. It was mostly empty forests and hills. I guess more people prefer to live on the coast. Also, they only have as many people as Alaska. There was also a town called St. Louis du I'm not kidding, that's actually the name. It's also one of the only towns in Canada to have 2 exclamation marks in their name. The drive through the woods was long since we had to go over Maine to get to the maritime provinces. In St. John, we looked at the reversing falls, which were falls that switched direction depending on the tide. It was starting to get late again, but we decided to drive a little bit further into Fundy National Park for the night. The Bay of Fundy is well known for having some of the highest tides in the world, so we went down to the beach in the evening to walk out on the ocean floor while it was exposed. We planned to go there near low tide because we didn't want to be dumb tourists and get taken out by the tide. There were also some fishing boats sitting in the sand. In the morning we drove up to the Hopewell Rocks, which are the famous rocks in this image. After getting a bit lost, we hiked up the rocks and got our picture underneath them. We got a quick snack and walked back to the rocks, but the water had already come far past where we were standing. We then drove over the bay and along the chocolate river, which was really brownish orange. I don't know, man, I don't think that's chocolate, that's really sus.
Hey, you can't say sus! That meme was dead like 5 months ago!
Anyway, we then drove over the bay into Moncton and passed through a town called Sackville and crossed into Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia wasn't too eventful since we need to catch our ferry to Newfoundland in the next few days. So we spent a day in Halifax and then powered through to Cape Breton Island. We were almost at the ferry, but there was a road closure and the fastest route was way further back. We had to spend a whole other day before arriving on the ferry on time. We got on the ferry for 7 hours and arrived in Channel Port aux Basques. The landscape was treeless and rocky, unlike the interior of the island. If I didn't know where I was, I would probably think we were in Iceland or the Faroe Islands. Just outside the town, we stayed in a campground called J.T. Cheeseman Park, which is arguably one of the best names ever for a campground. Newfoundland is known for that kind of stuff. They have really weird and funny place names. Here are some examples. Tickle Cove, Cupids, Happy Adventure, Random Island, Cow Head, Muddy Hole, Tilting, Man Point, and Little Paradise. Anyway, we drove up past Corner Brook and arrived at Deer Lake, which is a very ironic name since deer don't naturally live in Newfoundland. While in Deer Lake, we debated if we wanted to go up the northern peninsula. It would be a very long drive up to the top, and there's only one highway on the whole thing. We knew there was a lot of cool things to see there, though, so we decided to make the drive. The scenery was really mountainous, and the road changed elevation a lot. Once we left the mountains, we were met with ocean on one side, and mountains in the distance on the other. The road would take us along the coast until we got there, so it was very scenic. Nobody lived out here, though, so we stayed the night in a gravel pit. It was filled with all sorts of cool junk, like a bike, a tape player with the tape still in it, and random pieces of a disembodied Kylo Ren action figure. Also pieces of a disembodied caribou. We drove up to the Lanza Meadows the next morning and looked at the old Viking huts. These huts were a camp of the Norsemen, who were the first true European settlers of North America. almost 500 years before Columbus landed in the Bahamas. There were also some wild pitcher plants, the provincial flower of Newfoundland Labrador, but you can't pick them. That's illegal. There was also a nice hiking trail that took us along the coast where my brother had some shower thoughts. What if instead of wearing shoes, you just put shoe soles on the ground everywhere? It would be called a carpet? We then left L'Anse Meadows and slept in the same gravel pit as the night before and drove to Port au Choix, which was another ancient site with a bunch of old shards and artifacts. We headed all the way down to Deer Lake again. We were going to drive further, but our wheels started making some funky noises, so we had to slowly drive back to Deer Lake again, in the rain, hoping our wheel didn't fall off. In town, the mechanic shop fixed our truck like an Indy 500 pit stop. Luckily, we were in the place with some of the nicest people, and they quickly managed to get the truck back on the road. With our wheel feeling good as new, we powered all the way across the interior of the island. There was also a town called Badger, and I don't think badgers naturally live in Newfoundland either. By the end of the day, we made it to my grandparents' summer house, where we would stay for the next few days. We had some traditional food, like moose and cod tongues, and just hear me out, okay? They're not as bad as they sound. We went fishing as well, but when we came back to the shore, we couldn't dock, because there was a beluga whale under our boat. It was really playful like a dolphin, and it was really interested in the propeller of the boat, so we had to shut it off. And every time we turned it on again, it would swim back and try to touch it. So at first it was like, whoa, beluga whale, he's so cool, take a picture. But after it was like, okay, whale, you can leave now, we're floating away. We finally docked though, and the whale was not harmed in the process. While we were taking stuff off the boat, my brother was just petting the whale for a few minutes like a dog. We named him Bubbles. How do I transition from this? A few days later we knew about some puffin colonies nearby, and we wanted to go look at those for a while. I was really excited about this because puffins are my favorite animal. They are arguably one of the cutest animals ever, and the way they fly is awesome, and they have really colorful beaks. So we drove up through the fog and sat and watched the puffins for a while. They were really great. Afterwards, we went to Carbonear for some time and did some ATVing in the woods and the mountains. And I did most of the driving, but I had to take my dad with me because it's pretty obvious that that's illegal. Then we continued on the highway to St. John's, but before we looked around the city, we had to drive to Cape Spear. Cape Spear is the easternmost point of North America if you don't count Greenland, but it's definitely as far east as you can drive. It was officially the end of the road, but we still had a lot to see. Hello. Thank you for watching, but we are nowhere done yet. Once this video is finished, I'm going to try and get straight to work on part 2. As always, if you want to know when that's out, put a dent in that subscribe button. This video took forever to do, so it would be great if you sub if you haven't already. We're getting close to 200 subs, and that would be a really cool goal to reach. And if you are already subscribed, thanks for sticking around while I wasn't putting out videos forever. I was obviously on that trip, and I also just wanted to enjoy my summer and not have to worry about animations, so that's why the uploads were a little less consistent. If you have any fan art or anything like that, you can always send it to me at my email, lunchtimecartoons@gmail.com. I'll leave you with this time lapse I took on the highway from my phone. See you next time.